Okay, so if there's no other question, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I will talk about the mechanisms we have for uploading data. When we talk about data, we say files to FaceBase. So we basically have two main mechanisms to upload data to FaceBase. One is using what we call the DERIVA-Upload tool. DERIVA is the name of our suite of tools that we develop. This mechanism is basically the preferred mechanism for the reasons that I'm listing now. And it's especially good if you're trying to upload more than one file, more than a few files. Like if you see that you're gonna upload, at least 10 or more files to your data set, you definitely wanna consider getting set up with this DERIVA tool. It's really robust. It restarts from where it left off. So if you're somehow going through uploading 100 files and somehow your internet connection fails, then you don't have to go back. It will just restart the tool and it will continue loading the file that was loading when it got disconnected. Then you will have it has a very nice console that shows all the details of which files have been uploaded, which one failed. It will give you an error message that you can communicate to us if there was any problem, so we can debug the process. And also, you will see that you will have to somehow create a folder structure for your files. And it might be a little bit time consuming the first time, but since we see that people from data set to data set, they maintain a certain type of structure, then you can reuse and it becomes very, very easy and useful to do. So the other method of uploading files or data to the site is what Rob has shown, which is basically uploading from the browser. On any page, especially the replicate where we tie the data to, you have the different type of data, imaging data, sequencing data. At either of these levels or each of these sections, you can actually go and say, add data, and you can basically point to a file in your file system in your local computer and upload that file. And that works really well and it's very useful. But again, it's a manual process. So if you're only uploading 5 or 4 files, then it's probably useful. You don't have to go through setting up the tool. But if you have more files, then you would recommend you use the DERIVA tool. And also, if you are uploading a really large file and you get disconnected, then you will have to restart the whole process again. So with that in mind, we'll go through installing the DERIVA-Upload tool. It's a tool that we support them for Windows, Mac, and Linux. In the Linux, we can, if you have a Linux system with a GUI, you can set it up the same way you use it for Mac or Windows. If not, you can also use a command line tool capability. The whole list of instruction documentation is on our wiki, so let's go there and start going through the process. So again, we go to submit our FaceBase curation wiki. And if we go to the upload data files, here is our main instructions and documentation about how to upload all different type of files to the site. So we will go. Yes?
Hold on, I do want to add the links in the chat.
Okay.
So here we go.
Right.
So everyone can follow along.
So as we will see when using the DERIVA tool, one of the most important part is this organization of your files. So like Rob showed, different type of data, different type of files get added to different sections for the, so when we use the upload tool, we ask you to sort of organize your files under a certain structure, which is actually very simple. So once you have already gone through all the process that Rob showed, and that we're gonna actually go later on the hands-on session, you have created your data set, you have created your biosamples, you have created your experiments, and you're relating your biosamples to the experiment through the replicate. And now we're trying to associate the files or load these files to that each specific replicate. So basically, well, the structure that we create in your local data, in your local computer will be, a top level directory that has the record ID of your data set. So you will have to go back to the browser, copy that and name a folder with that name. And then under that, you will have create one folder for each of the replicate, where you will also enter the record ID for that replicate. And there under each replicate, you will organize your data by type. So in a folder called seq, you will put all your raw sequencing files. In a folder called proc, you will create subfolders with different mapping assemblies. Let's say if it's MM10 or if it's HG19, we'll go over that. You will create a subfolder and then add all your different type of data sets, all different type of data files under that folder. Same thing for imaging, and anything that is high resolution imaging data, you will put them under a folder called IMG. If you want to create a mesh model, you will put all those files under the mesh directory. Then if you want to upload thumbnails for your high resolution imaging data, let's say you have a very large TIFF file that is, you don't want to, it's not going to show in the browser, but you can create a low resolution version of that file and save it as a JPEG or PNG, and you add it to that folder. We're going to see later in the sample, in the session, how to do that. And same thing for array data. If you have microarray data or other type of CSV files or something like that, you can put them under the array. And here in this little image, we also have the formats that we accept when using the DERIVA-Upload tool for each of these different type of data. So for sequencing data, we want the raw sequencing files to be in the FASTQ gzip format. For processing data, we will take BAMs, BAM-BY, counts, TSV, FASTQs, and QC, and the bed, big bed, big wig, etc. Same thing for IMG, for imaging data, mesh models, thumbnails, and arrays. So once I want to go through this, we'll go through, we'll make in the exercise, we'll go see how this exactly work. But now I wanted to go, let's go over through the installation of the clients. So here, we'll click here where it says DERIVA clients. We have precise instruction on how to install them. So if we want to install for Windows or Mac OS, we click here on the DERIVA client release tools, and we have the release versions for Mac and Windows. So I'm gonna demonstrate on a Mac, which is what I'm using. You just basically save the file. Wow, it's probably gonna take a little bit.
I would just, I'll just, if
yes.
I would chime in that if attendees can follow along and actually do the installation, that would be the ideal.
Right.
So actually follow along with this demonstration and go through those steps, especially if you think you're gonna have,
Right.
as Alejandro said, over 10 files. If you're not able to install the tools, like if you don't have the right permissions, the hands-on session will still apply to you because most of it's done in the browser. So this will only really affect you at the very end, but it's great if you can do it because it's one of the more, it's the only like software that you have to install from us to do the bulk upload of files, and you definitely want to do that if you have large data or a large number of files. So I just wanted to chime in since we had time all that downloads.
Right. So if you are installing on Windows or Mac, just download any of these two files, the corresponding file, and then once it's downloaded, we'll go through the installation. If you are installing Linux, I'll do that when I'm done with the Mac. So now once I download the file, I basically go through this installation file. Many times I get this that you cannot open it because it's not a recognized source. So you close this, you have to go to your system preferences, and then in security and privacy, you will have to tell your system to open it anyways. So you will go through the installation. I typically stay. It is asking me for root privileges, so you probably have to have access to your system to install. Okay, so once it's installed, I can delete here, and then in my applications folder in the Mac, I will have a folder called Deriva Client Tools, and there I will see we'll have different other tools that probably the one that we'll try to use today is just the DERIVA-Upload tool, but it also install other tools that might be useful, like the Deriva Authentication Agent. We'll try to touch on that too a little bit. But anyway, so we don't have much time, so let's start the DERIVA-Upload tool by double clicking there. Once that I probably already have a configured for FaceBase.org, but it's possible that when it just starts, it will ask you to go through a configuration, which is basically this dialog. Okay, so basically what you will do, you will click the add button, and you will go through this little server configuration window. There you will enter www.facebase.org. It already defaults to catalog number 1, and you click OK. And once you add that sort of the destination site for uploading the data, you click OK, and the tool is already configured to upload to that site. So the next thing you have to do is log in. You will log in with you need to log in with the ID that you use to join the Globus group that manages the authentication for your group. So I will log in with that. Okay, and then once I'm logged in, then you just click browse, and you will go to the, let's say, the top level folder where you have your data distributed, your data organized, and that will scan your data set and will be ready to upload. Okay, so we'll go through all this when we are done, when we go on the exercise. I just want to go through the installation of the tool. The installation of the tool on Windows is pretty much identical. Now let me switch to let me switch to a Linux version that I have. Let me go back to the instructions. Here, the installations in a Linux system is very simple. You just open the terminal and you do a pip3 install of the Deriva client. So you will need to have Python 3 installed in your Linux system, which you can install using YAM or whatever package management you use for your system. But basically, you just, once you open a window, you can do a user level install or not, and you just install the Deriva client, and it's installed. And once you install the Deriva client, you basically type in DERIVA-Upload, and you will open up a tool which is basically the exact same tool that we had before. Now, we have a few more minutes, so I want to say something about imagining that you're trying to upload data from a cluster or something like that where you don't have through a Linux cluster where you don't have a graphical interface. You can still do that using our command line tools. So the way you do that is you first need to run the Deriva authentication tool. So let's say you have imagine that you do have a Mac available. So you will start your Deriva authentication agent. Then you will go through the authentication process. And then once so this part, it's only doing the authentication part. You will see an icon here that says show token. And then if you click the click details, you will see that it basically is giving you an authentication token that you can use in your command line interface session. So you do a copy of that token, and then you can basically use the same. Now you can go back into your Linux system and use let me see if I have the command here. What do I do? But basically you can do a command line interface tool. Forgot where right. So basically, if you go to this section, it says upload your files using the command line interface. You basically you use, once you install your so this is now you go back here. I will go back here. to my authentication tool, show details, copy again the token. Oops. Well, it's not copying the token, but basically, so I just want to show this. So basically, that will be the process that you will go through. You will use some sort of either your Windows system or your Mac system, and to authenticate, get that token, copy and paste your token to your command line interface command, and you can basically go through your files, upload your files in the same fashion. Where here, the last part of the command will be basically the path to the top level folder on your file level organizations. Okay, so if you don't have any question, I will show a few more slides about something I want to say about human subject data, and then we'll have the break. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so like Rob said, human subject data is treated a little bit different, or quite different because of the requirements. So we had to, all the data files that are considered human subject need to be encrypted, and they are transferred to us, and we store them in a dedicated server that has different security properties. So anything that is human subject data, you will not see it available on the catalog for download through a click. You will have to go through a request process in order to access that data. So both the data submission process and the data request process are different for human subject data. So submitting human subject data, so again, first warning is, you need to make sure that you never upload any data that can be considered human subject to the site, either using the browser or using the upload tool. It's not something that we can check on our site whether that data is human subject or not. So this is your responsibility. You need to make sure that no data that can be identifiable or considered data subject or needs to be protected is uploaded to the site. If you're in doubt, just email to us and we can go through a discussion and see what can be, whether it's correspond there or not. So if you are submitting human subject data, the normal flow is that you first create a data set, kind of like the same process that Rob went through. You add your description, you add your high-level tags, you add all the metadata that you can. You can even create the biosamples, the replicates, experiments, but you don't upload any file that is actually considered human subject. Then once you went through that process, we will send you instructions on how to package your data and encrypt it so that you can transfer it to us and we'll store it in our dedicated server. And the encryption mechanism that we use for all this is PGP public key encryption. So the way it works, we will send you a key. You will have to go through the process of encrypting the data and send it to us encrypted, and then we'll store it like that, and we can decrypt it if necessary to package for other users. But like Rob also said, not all human data is considered human subject data. So some data can be shown in the public side. For example, bigwig files that only have frequencies and things like that. So again, this is something that's part through that when people submit human data or human subject data, this is something that we go through the discussion and see what parts you can upload to the site, which parts you cannot. And we have many human data sets that do have some files that are available in the site and some protective data that is in our dedicated servers. So again, this is something that we have to go through when we are submitting the data. requesting human subject data, probably not the focus of this meeting, but I just want to say that basically same thing, since we don't have all this data available for download on the site, you will have to go through a process, which is what would you call the data access request, which involves, submitting your IRB documents from your institution. And once that gets accepted by the DAC, the hub will contact you, and we go through this process of, requesting your encryption data, the encryption key, so that we can encrypt the data, prepare the data, and give you the details on how you download that data. That process is a little bit not exactly the way we would like it to be right now, but we're streaming that process, and I think in a couple of weeks, we'll probably have a much streamlined version of that process. I think it's gonna work much better. Okay, so I think that's basically what I wanted to say about submitting and requesting human subject data. I think it's time for the break. So last thing I wanted to say is that if you haven't done it yet, before we start the hands-on session, it would be great if you can go and join the Globus group. This is the link. I think it was also sent by email, and it's also now in the chat, in the top of the chat for this session. Basically, you go through that URL, and you will have to go through the login, which you can either use your institution login once you get to that Globus page, or you can, if you already have a Globus ID, you can use your Globus ID to log in, or you can create a new Globus ID in a few steps. And then once you are logged in, you will see, go to a page that says join group. Once you join the group, we'll add you to the group, and then you will ready to start adding data to the group. So right now, this is being done for this demo project that we created, which is not a real project, but something that we created for this session. But this is exactly the process you have to go through if you are adding data to a new project with your real project, with your real data. So if you don't have any other questions, I think that are we gonna go to the breakout now?
It is, yes, it's time for our break.